Tales of encounters with the strange or the unsettling have existed ever since humans first started telling stories. From terrifying to unsettling to strange to dark to just plain weird, there is no shortage of tales to find. One such weird tale that have gained prominence in the age of the internet speaks of a tall humanoid that stares at you with small, wide-open eyes while he grins at you with a wide and unnaturally long, eerie smile. Alien, cryptid, stalker. Who or what is the Grinning Man? October 16th, 1966. Two boys in Elizabeth, New Jersey were walking home along 4th Street and Jersey Street. They eventually reached a corner parallel to the New Jersey Turnpike. This turnpike is elevated with a steep incline and a large wire fence that runs along the edge of the other street. It's an area that's supposed to be inaccessible. The boys would keep walking until they spotted a large figure standing behind the wire fence, just under the bright streetlights, standing in exactly the area that was supposed to be inaccessible. The figure did not appear to notice the boys at first, as he was staring at a house that was off in the distance. But the boys noticed him, and they nudged each other to point him out because he looked weird. But they were being a bit too loud, and the sounds of their voices made the figure's attention shift to them. He was a tall, bald man, wearing a strange green metal suit that seemed to reflect the streetlights. He was just standing there, staring directly at the boys, with eyes that were beady and round. But the thing that unsettled the boys the most was the grin that he had on his face. A large, creepy smile that did not seem to be natural. From their vantage point and due to the dim lighting, the boys could not tell if this figure had a nose or ears or hair at all. All they saw was a bald head, a green suit, beady eyes, and a very creepy grin. And that was enough for them. They did not stick around, opting to flee the area before anything could happen. The entire time they ran home, they had felt like they were being watched. In November that same year, a sewing machine salesman living in Mineral Wells, West Virginia, named Woodrow Derenberger, was returning from a business trip to Marietta, Ohio. Driving on Interstate 77, he spotted what he would later describe as an old kerosene lamp with a flat bottom and a dome-like top. The object blocked the road ahead of him, forcing him to stop. Now standing still and watching this strange craft, a tall man wearing a glossy dark blue coat emerged from this object and walked up to his car. He had tanned skin, dark brown hair that was combed straight back, and features that appeared normal. In fact, nothing about him was strange. He seemed perfectly normal. Except for one thing. He had a large grin that never left his face. Even when he spoke to Derenberger, his smile remained. Because of that, Derenberger realized that his lips did not move, but he heard the man's voice clearly, as if he was talking to him telepathically. The man was very friendly and asked Derenberger what he was called. He introduced himself, and the strange man would then reply that he was called Indrid Cold. He told Derenberger that he just wanted to talk, that there was no reason to be afraid. He claimed that he was from a place that had less power than the United States, and then proceeded to ask a few questions. This whole encounter would conclude with Cold saying that he would visit the salesman again before he returned to the strange object and left. During this entire encounter, The man, known as Indrid Cold, would stare unflinchingly, and a smile never left his face. Durenberger would report this event to the police as soon as he arrived home. A more unsettling encounter that is sometimes tied to the Grinning Man is one that was reported by a family in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, again in that same year. The Lilly family had been dealing with strange activity, so much so that they had begun to believe that their home was haunted. Automobiles that were near their home would stall, or doors that were locked and shut would be open come morning. Kitchen cabinets and doors inside the house would slam in the middle of the night while everyone was asleep. Their phone would ring, with the only sound that was heard was a metallic, incoherent sound on the other end. A sound that the phone company had absolutely no explanation for. Then there were the strange lights that they would see outside their home. Blue lights, green lights, red lights, and even things that would change color. The family would not report any of this, not until after a strange thing that happened late one night. Their daughter would wake up in the middle of the night to see a man standing by her bed, grinning broadly at her. She could not see any features beyond the grin. Screaming in fear, the girl hid underneath the covers. But as nothing happened for several moments, she decided to risk it and peek. She then found that she was once again alone in the room. Absolutely terrified, the girl screamed again, which caused her parents to rush into her room. They found her crying her eyes out, shakily telling them what happened, and she did not want to sleep alone for months after. While these three encounters are often tied to the Grinning Man, it's Durenberger's account that is the most famous. Even back then, it caused a media frenzy. He did an interview that would air on TV, and soon other claims of encounters with the Grinning Man came flooding in. For 3 weeks after the interview, local newspapers ran several stories about this mysterious figure. In fact, some accounts were shared by Woodrow Durenberger himself in Chapter 2 of his book, Visitors from Lanolos, My Contact with Indrid Cold. One such account came from a family who had stopped their car to watch the same ship that he had seen. Another account came from a young man who had been driving on the same stretch of road when a strange craft would hover over his car and shone a white light on him, which caused him to speed up, leaving the scene and immediately reporting it to the police. And finally, Durenberger also shares a story of 2 truck drivers who had been stopped by the same ship. They did not report this encounter, nor did they want their names to be known. But according to Durenberger's book, these 2 men had spoken to John Keel. Aside from his book, Durenberger would follow up with more stories of his encounter with Indrid Cold. He would even give a lecture on his UFO claims in Youngstown in 1968. By 1969, he would claim that he had regular contact with these extraterrestrials, which included visiting their planet twice. I mentioned John Keel before. Well, he also plays a part in this story. The story of Indrid Cold became popularized in 1970 when it was featured in the book Strange Creatures from Time and Space by John Keel. Keel had a keen interest in both ufology as well as the paranormal, and it's from his book that we find the 2 stories I spoke of before, the 2 boys that encountered the Grinning Man and the Lilly family about their strange experiences. According to Keel, these accounts were all the same entity. And if Point Pleasant, West Virginia sounded familiar, It's where the Mothman story took place, and Keel would suggest that Indrid Cold, the Grinning Man, was linked to Mothman reports in Point Pleasant. The reports of Mothman began on November 15th, 1966, which was 13 days after Durenberger's press conference about his experience with this strange entity known as Indrid Cold. Keel would also explore the strangeness of the Mothman in his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, where he would draw an even wider attention to the creature known as the Mothman of Point Pleasant, even more so than Indrid Cold. When it comes to theories, unlike many other cryptids, there aren't many. In fact, many people who theorize about the Grinning Man say that he's maybe some kind of alien humanoid. Some have even speculated that maybe he could be one of the Men in Black and had a purpose that no one could figure out. In fact, when it comes to Indrid Cold, the biggest arguments are against it. Keel's account of this whole thing has been heavily criticized. Writer Brian Dunning, who is the host of the Skeptoid podcast, noted that Durenberger's story didn't point to the man's grin being odd or unusual. He just said that the man had a smile on his face. The Skeptoid article would also criticize Keel for failing to cite a source for many of his claims. The article says that despite looking for any corroborating sources, none was found, which does raise some questions about the two boys and the Lilly family who reportedly encountered this Grinning Man figure. And I can sort of attest to that because every single article about the Grinning Man that mentioned the boys or the Lilly family does reference John Keel's book as the only source, so I wasn't able to find anything else either. Another skeptic is folklorist David Clark, and he would be more direct in his criticism. In his 2015 book, How UFOs Conquered the World, The History of a Modern Myth, he states that Keel's distinction between fact and fiction was a very fine one. And another skeptic is journalist John C. Sherwood, who in the May-June 2002 issue of Skeptical Inquirer published an analysis of private letters between Keel and fellow UFO researcher Gray Barker. According to Sherwood, there are significant differences between what Keel wrote at the time of his investigation and what he wrote in his first book about the Mothman reports, which according to Sherwood raises questions about the accuracy of the book. Barker and Keel traveled to Point Pleasant to investigate the Mothman claims after they first occurred. Initially, they planned to co-author a book on this case, but Keel would withdraw his involvement due to Barker's tendency to add fictional elements to the story. Both of them would publish their own separate books. Barker's book is called The Silver Bridge and was published in 1970. And it's in this book that the idea of the Mothman somehow being involved in the collapse of the Silver Bridge is found. And John Keel reportedly did not like this book. In fact, according to some sources, he referred to that book as filled with a lot of crap. As mentioned, Keel published his own book in 1970, reporting on the Mothman reports and initially concluding that the creature was likely the result of people seeing unusually large birds in the area. But by the time he published the Mothman Prophecies, only 5 years later, he had changed his views on the subject drastically and was now leaning more into the paranormal or strange. I mentioned in the beginning that this story has become more prominent thanks to the internet in later years. That's because there is a creepypasta related to this figure that began in 2012 with a Reddit post that spoke of a strange experience that the poster had with a creepy man who kept grinning at him. And ever since then, the Grinning Man is often featured in stories about strange paranormal encounters. But the actual story of Indrid Cold dates back to 1960s when a salesman gave an account of a strange encounter with a grinning entity, which then grew into a bigger story when John Keel wrote about it in his book. And of course, when the salesman himself decided to recount the tale several times over, with more and more details added in, which is where we're at the moment. It does seem like a story that spiraled out of control, but aside from Woodrow Derenberger's account, it's very hard to verify any other story about the Grinning Man, which does make you think that it's possibly just a story. A creepy one, but a story nonetheless. But for fun, let's entertain the idea. What do you think Indrid Cold was? An alien? An alien humanoid type thing? A man in black? Or just some creepy dude with a creepy stare and a creepy smile that scared the crap out of people in the 1960s? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.